Welcome back to the Midlife Awakening, a podcast where we have real, raw, and deeply honest conversations about healing, identity, and what it truly means to come home to yourself in the second half of life. I'm your host, Odelia, and today's guest is someone whose story I know is going to stop so many of you in your tracks, because it might just be your story too. Isabel Lepist spent nearly 3 decades building an extraordinary international career. She worked across the UK, Angola, Berlin, and The Hague, collaborating with over 90 nationalities and earning awards for innovation and leadership. From the outside, she was exceptional. On the inside, however, she was exhausted, anxious, and quietly convinced that something was fundamentally wrong with her. At 52, Isabel received a dual diagnosis of ADHD and autism, a moment she describes as equal parts relief and grief. Relief because her entire life suddenly made sense, but grief for the decades spent blaming herself for differences that were neurological, not personal. Since then, Isabel has retrained as an ADHD coach and founded At the Mill Pond, where she supports neurodivergent adults, primarily women aged 18 to 80, with executive functioning, emotional regulation, burnout recovery, and self-compassion. She also consults with organizations on neuro-inclusive workplace practices, helping employers build environments where neurodivergent people can actually thrive. Today we're going deep. We're talking about what masking really costs you, why burnout is an access issue and not a character flaw, the very real link between ADHD, impulsivity, and relationship vulnerability, and what it feels like to finally stop fighting yourself and start building a life that fits your brain. If you ever felt like you were working twice as hard as everyone else just to cope, this one is for you. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Midlife Awakening podcast. I'm your host, Odelia. This is a podcast about transformation for women who are waking up to who they really are while navigating everything that comes with midlife. And I want you to know I'm on this journey right alongside you. This is the show where we explore everything from the spiritual tools that can help us in our daily practices to healing modalities that we can use to heal what we've been carrying for so long, to the everyday midlife topics that a midlife woman faces, like perimenopause, finances, career changes, and so much more. Each week we go deeper into what it means to heal, to awaken, and to finally become the most authentic version of yourself. I'm so glad that you found your way here. So Isabel, welcome to the Midlife Awakening. I'm so glad that you're here and to have you on today.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
You have such a powerful story, and I know our listeners are going to feel so seen by this conversation. Before we dive in, can you introduce yourself in your own words and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
My name is Isabel. I'm often known as Izzy for short. I'm nearly 56, recently diagnosed with ADHD and autism. I have spent 25, 30 years in the corporate world. I was in global roles in the energy and global logistics sector, and then retrained as an ADHD specific coach. Most of my clients are actually autistic as well, similar to myself, and largely they're women who are in a corporate environment or studying, often high achieving, high performing individuals looking to thrive rather than survive. So that's a potted version. Was there anything else you'd like me to add?
No, I mean that's perfect. So you spent decades building this extraordinary international career, working across the UK, Angola, Berlin, The Hague, and collaborating with over 90 nationalities, if I'm correct. So on the outside, that must have looked really incredible, but what was really going on the inside?
It was very hard, but it was exciting and it was very good. I mean, what's important for me is to have intellectual stretch because my brain needs stuff that's hard. It's a double-edged sword. So I do enjoy problem solving, difficult things, and it is important to do things that scare you a little. I think it's good for you, but there is a price to pay for that because of the processing time that I need, which is longer than other people, and my difficulty in assimilating or following instructions. So the format in which information comes at me can only be processed in a certain way. That can make certain situations very, very challenging. I have probably invested more hours than I should have done or needed to have done, and perhaps more compared to others because of those things. And I didn't know why. So I was often ill, fatigued, and stressed. And we're talking debilitating anxiety. brought on by that. So when people hear and learn about ADHD, they may think, oh, it's just a bit of inattentiveness and distractibility and forgetting things. And, there are some serious aspects to it that can affect one's life quite significantly. And anxiety and stress is one of them. And certainly something that I've experienced that made life very difficult. So getting to places, travel is probably one of the most stressful things for me. I absolutely hate flying. And one role, I flew every week to the Hague or to Schiphol. I had shingles like 3 or 4 times a year. I was just shattered doing contractor hours. So 12, 13, 14-hour days and back to back. But the job itself was great. People were great. The physical and mental cost was very, very high.
Yeah. And so here you are, you're working twice as hard as anyone else because of your processing needs, and you're flying back and forth, which is not good for your anxiety. So for women in the audience who recognize that exhaustion of you're obviously exhausted, but you keep going. So what do you think is actually happening for you neurologically?
Well, there's sensory overload, which you can not necessarily be aware of. I mean, certain things you wear where things just do your head in and it's too much. But you can actually be overwhelmed and not actually realize that that is what it is. So going into an airport, for instance, for me is like walking into a rock concert. And I now, through diagnosis and research and understanding myself, like today, I went to Sainsbury's. I would never dream of going into a supermarket without my noise cancelling headphones on, because I just can't do it. So going into an airport for a start was just so stressful, overwhelming. That you just want to curl up into a little ball. And as soon as I got to my hotel, that is pretty much what I did, because I was just exhausted and my ears would be ringing and it would just be taking cover, really.
I think you've described that pretty well about what's happening for you neurologically.
That's just one aspect, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and I think also, just to add to that, if that's okay, is that in ADHD brains, the neurotransmitters work differently and the brain structure is different for a neurodivergent person. So most ADHDs, it's not the same for everybody because everybody is different and can have other I don't like the word, comorbidities or other conditions that, makes the interface with the world different. But often dopamine or noradrenaline can be at very sort of low activity levels. So what happens is that if it's low, the transporters kind of suck it away. So it doesn't stay in the neural pathways as long as it does for a non-neurodivergent person. So your motivation can be lacking. And also you record the message, there's no payoff, because you don't feel and sense the dopamine, the pleasure, the fulfillment, the satisfaction. And it's your system is saying to you, what's the payoff? What's the point? What's the payoff? So to actually continue to drive yourself forward to complete and finish or instigate can be very, very hard. And that is one of the reasons. That's a very simplistic explanation of what's happening. So to actually motivate yourself or to focus and sustain that level of focus requires strategies, brain training. And for me, most recently, it's been able to come about through understanding self-compassion as well, but also understanding the neuroscience. And it's not my fault. There's an explanation, and you can devise ways of managing how one's operating system works so you can work optimally. But when you're employed full-time, required to deliver on a job, there's very little room to be able to accommodate what you're actually needing to be able to do to perform the best. You just have to step up and crack on and deliver, whether it does you in or not. It's just the reality of it.
And I can really relate to that. And sometimes what you can end up doing is, because you're not getting that hit, you then procrastinate until it's the very last minute. And then now you're under pressure.
Yeah. So you're actually through lastminute.com, you're creating adrenaline to do the sprint finish, which is highly stressful because it doesn't always go according to plan, but it is the conditions that you need. But there are ways of bottling that in a way to help create conditions so that you can actually deliver on things differently and work with how your brain performs rather than against it.
And we'll talk a little bit about that later on in the episode. But yeah, something else I want to touch on, the noise thing where you mentioned going into Tesco. I never knew that was part of, would that be part of your ADHD or your autism, or a little bit of both?
Oh, I think it can be both. I mean, I think commonly the sensorial sort of overload is often recognized as very much an autistic thing, but ADHD brains and bodies, I think also neurodivergent people, we're sensitive to temperature, smell, all sorts of things that other people don't notice. So for me, I think perhaps it's a combination of the two. It's not always possible to separate it out, but smell, sound, electricity, the hum, you don't notice it. So if you ever have headphones and experiment, go into the supermarket and put your noise cancelling thing on, and then you just open your headphone like that, you will hear the din. You will notice it. Whereas when you walk in, you're just like, oh, it's not really apparent, but there's so much lighting, overhead lights. I have a real problem with this light in my face. I don't like these bright overhead lights. So people often see me, they're going, well, is the sun in your eyes? I'm like, no. It's just, I just can't stand the light. I can't think straight because the lights, where it...
Wow, that's really interesting to talk about. And I'm sure we'll come on to it as we go through. But so that really comes into like the environments that you're in. Especially if you're working for yourself, you can sort of control it. But if you're not working for yourself, you're working for corporates, you really do need those adjustments to be put in place to help you so that you can be focused and productive.
Yes, I mean, there's what they call reasonable adjustments, which can often be technical, ergonomic, but that's not just what you need. You need a manager or leader who really knows how to aid their team member or colleague to perform to their best, regardless of whether they're neurodivergent or not. And it's, how do I help you perform the best? Because, for example, moons ago, I had an excellent manager who's now retired, and I would say, if there's deliverables, she says, well, that's not, priority now. I said, you have to give me a deadline. Because if you don't give me a deadline, it ain't going to happen. Yeah. So we agreed ways of working that work well for me. So it isn't just having a quiet space to be able to sit with your headphones on and cut yourself off and the lights low and not be hassled by background noise. It goes more extensive than that. It's not just physical, it's spiritual, if you like, just like anybody, any human being that, and I've said this many times, that the corporate environment is not necessarily particularly humane for individuals who aren't neurodivergent. We used to have back-to-back meetings where you're literally running for the loo because the one, where there's no gap between Zoom meetings, or you've got a meeting and there's no time to eat. And I'm somebody who needs to graze because boom and bust with sugar, thirsty, and I can discover that I'm really thirsty and really, really hungry and not realize, and be very, very uncomfortable. So there's lots of things about the workplace that can afford to change in many, many ways anyway. But I think people and employers perhaps need to understand it's not just tick box exercise with setting somebody up physically. It's all of the things, and it's ongoing because our symptoms can exacerbate because it's highly situational. Just because we were able to do something brilliantly yesterday does not necessarily mean we can do it equally brilliantly today. There are factors that can affect, just like anybody, but to the extreme. And everything is in the extreme. I think particularly with ADHD as well, there's no middle ground. So when you're tired, you're absolutely wiped out. And when you have an emotional reaction to something in a meeting, for example, it's huge, and your heart's palpitating and you're trying not to, say something.
No, I can definitely relate to that, definitely. So let's go back to when you received your dual diagnosis. So you were diagnosed with both ADHD and autism. And was there some parts of you that were relieved and some parts of you that were grieving? Could you take us back to that moment?
There was quite a lot of things going on. So I had the formal diagnosis for ADHD and I met the criteria for autism, which I already knew that I would. And that's why I didn't pursue a formal diagnosis for autism. It's in my family. I knew that, but later then went on to understand how much more autistic I was than I actually realized. So it was, and it starts before the diagnosis, that there is a run-up period where you've made a decision that you, for whatever reason, and it's different for different people. Because I really was shocked at the idea that I could be ADHD. It didn't connect for me. It didn't resonate at all. I didn't know anything about it, but it was only when I read an article about anxiety, I was researching anxiety, because I'd got to the point where I was thinking all of my strategies and tactics and ways of working are no longer enough. Menopause kicks in and your energy levels are taken up with dealing with whatever's new things going on with your body. So the mask of pretending to be a, dare I say it, normal person, it was just taking up too much juice. And I was still suffering from the, anxiety. And this is where I found this article about this, and it discovered it was a lady with ADHD who was talking, and I was like, flipping it. Am I allowed to say that? This is me, and how can that be possible? So I was so shocked, and that's why I think I also needed the diagnosis, because I thought, no, I'm just being self-indulgent here. I'm just losing the plot here and making stuff up, and I just need to know, really, I'm somebody I was working in data. I need evidence, I need proof, I need referencing, I need articles, I need, to do the research and stuff like that. So that's why it was important for me. So there was that whole thing where I thought, no, yes. So you're going up this, can't be, yes, I am. How very dare you spend, because I went private diagnosis because I'm impatient. How dare you spend so much money on something that's, self-indulgent? That's how I felt it was. So there was all of that. And I very nearly cancelled on 2 occasions. But it wasn't just that. It was also the stuff that you have to read and the questionnaires that you have to fill in, a sort of self-reporting, if you like. And there was one from my family member or my parent, and looking at your childhood. So it was very much like, you've got all your stuff sorted and it's nice and sitting at the bottom of the water, and you've got your clear water, and it's like someone's just gone and shaken it all up. And it was very unsettling, the whole thing. It made me feel very vulnerable and fragile and weird and very peculiar, because a lot of stuff had to be dredged up. And then there's the actual assessment itself, and then afterwards. So there's the before the thing and then afterwards. It was very, very helpful, more than anything. But I was sad looking back at the girl and the young woman, because it was quite clearly obvious to me, not that I'm making excuses, because we take accountability and responsible for actions, and we look at how do we make the future better. But I felt quite sad for her, because had some really, really awful things, not great things happen. And I think with the knowledge and the empowerment I have now, that would never have happened to me. And I think that was what really drove me to help other women and girls and men to take the shortcut. I'd taken 40, 50 years to get to the point of enlightenment, if you like, but a better place to be able to manage my life well, understand myself and be kind to myself. And the coaching was just like mind-blowing, that I retrained to be the coach so that people would not have to take 40, 50 years, but have a 12-week program that's really going to help, or give them an advantage for them then to build on, work with. Because it just horrified me because of the things that have happened. I'm a domestic abuse survivor. I've had some things happen that, because I realized how vulnerable I was as well. I couldn't read people's intentions, interpret behavior, how I came across. People would misinterpret because I was just being nice. Unwanted attention. And there are some rather horrifying statistics about neurodivergent individuals, particularly women with ADHD, homelessness, domestic abuse, harmful relationships, sexual assault, all of these things, because fundamentally it does have this extra layer of vulnerability, which is frightening and very, very worrying when you think about young girls in school who are often not diagnosed, and they themselves don't realize how to take care of themselves and understand what is actually going on, because ADHD can mean unfavorable life outcomes. Can do, if it's not diagnosed or it's not managed well.
Wow. I didn't even, I mean, you hear a lot about ADHD and autism, and but you never think about it from that perspective. Wow. And I mean, I did have a question around that, around how does ADHD affect us in relationships? Do we become more vulnerable to things like love bombing
Yeah.
and
Limerence.
limerence? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because of the, and because, is it because of the dopamine hits that we're looking for?
Yes. And I think also validity, approval. I mean, also depends on your upbringing, your attachment. Perhaps if you've had attachment disorder, or trauma, life trauma, which I've also experienced. All of these things can sort of bring about a very unhelpful mix, if you like. So yes, there are these, the boundaries of keeping yourself safe, impulsivity, reacting rather than responding to that dopamine. So yes, you can get into some real sticky situations, or dive headlong into something without really, really thinking. I mean, I started to notice how there were other individuals in my life who I admired and respected, and they seemed to be able to make calm, rational. And I put this in my novel actually, because I've written a novel, a thriller, and my main protagonist. These things are highlighted and talked about, or that other people seem to be able to have a linear progression through life and think about things, and we're able to have a level of not assertiveness but a certain amount of agency, self-respect, and self-determination. I mean, I had all of those things that had desires and aspirations. I couldn't necessarily fulfill them because I didn't know how to. And some of our factory settings are not in place, and we have to learn the boundaries to say, I'm not doing that. No, I'm not doing that now. I'll have to wait, think about it, act on it. So there's lots of things that I've learned. Impulsivity, yeah, we can all do silly things, but sometimes we can make some very expensive mistakes. Just as an example, many moons ago, I walked into Fords of Winsford, big car showroom for a Citroen Picasso, and came out with a Mitsubishi Shogun. Yeah, I've done some, it's not about adrenaline seeking, throwing myself off a building, bungee jumping or roller coasters. Can't stand anything like that. So the impulsivity can affect you long term. Yeah.
I mean, I didn't even think about ADHD and autism from that perspective. You think when people talk about it, you just think like, making adjustments for your environment, learning new simple routines, but you've really taken it to a whole other level in terms of, like your vulnerability, even in relationships, the impulsivity. And do you think the impulsivity paired with people pleasing could be I mean, that could be quite a dangerous combination. I know
It can, because often what you find, I mean, also with my clients, when we look at strengths and saboteurs, that it's very, very, it's a commonality, if you like, that overplayed strengths is people pleasing, giving, high empaths. And when you've got that, plus the vulnerability and in danger of being a foil for a narcissistic personality, you can be in trouble, because you have this strong desire to give, to love, to fix, rescue, save, and take on the emotions of others. And if you're not aware of that, you can end up being totally exhausted and consumed by the emotional state of other people, or that your partner. And that can be extremely damaging and unhealthy. And the empathy is a marvelous quality, but in good measure, because everything, as I say, with ADHD, in my experience, is extremes. There is no middle ground. You can also have those where no empathy whatsoever, or extreme, and you're blubbing your heart out for no apparent reason over something, and getting all caught up in it, where you want to try and aim for the middle with most things. So, I mean, this is the thing. I've done some LinkedIn posts about it. Like, it's, done, not done, now, not now. Everything is that or that. And it's very difficult to cruise in the middle.
Yeah. And I've definitely seen that with myself. I think I was people pleasing for a very long time. So it was like overly giving, overly being empathetic with everybody else. And exactly what you've just said, just giving so much to everybody else. And then I've sort of hit perimenopause, and I think I've gone completely the other direction, where I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. No.
Yeah.
And there is no middle ground. It's either a complete yes, overgiving, or a complete no, and just leave me alone.
Yeah. Because you do have to take care of yourself and love yourself. I know the lady who trained me, Leanne Maskell, she always said, you put your, in a plane, you always put your own oxygen mask on first before you help others. Quite like that analogy, but yeah. So,
And that's hard for any woman, whether you're neurodiverse or not. I think the self-love thing it's very, very difficult because of culture, really, the way we're raised as
yes,
women. Yeah. So it
yes,
is very, very difficult for us to find that self-love.
yeah, because we are products of our generation.
Yeah,
We also can have culture, generational trauma, which
definitely.
and then how you process things can make life events more traumatic than they would necessarily be for somebody else. And the healing process for trauma can be complex and difficult for that reason. So yes, it's complicated.
And there's definitely this emergence or this awareness now of women being late diagnosed. And why do you think that is? I mean, I don't know what the percentages are of women that have ADHD, but it definitely seems like there's more of an awareness now. Why do you think that is?
So I think there's a greater understanding about how things show up, because the actual criteria generally apply to, well, obviously with medical things, often they apply to male white individuals or children. So the assessments, a lot of, for example, I was saying, no, 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 didn't have that, because often with women and girls, it's internalized. So it's not necessarily seen or attributed. And the symptom of it, like anxiety, is identified more commonly. And the other things overlooked. And I don't think it's necessarily through bad medical practice or anything like that. I just think that the criteria and the research, I know it's ongoing because I've looked into it, needs to be looked at to capture it and be able to recognize it in women and girls. So, it can look very, very different. Zoning out, quiet, not understanding the instructions in the classroom, being too shy to say, can you explain that to me again, for fear of being stupid, because that's how I felt. It was the person sitting next to me that educated me most of the
Yeah.
time, because they would explain things to me, because and I just thought I was just thick and stupid. But in other areas, I was exceptional. So again, that no middle ground, extremes and stuff. So yeah, I think with women and girls, it's that sort of understanding of how it shows up is far, far greater than it was.
And also, I think masking plays does masking also play a
Yes.
big part in it, because we
Yes.
tend to mask it a lot more than boys?
Yes. I think, there's certain expectations of women and of girls because of the roles that we play. So we are programmed often to be mothers. We may be bringing up other back end of the family. The older sister, daughter can be bringing up the younger children. Compliance, you're seen and not heard. You just crack on. You have to be polite, have good, nice manners, deportment. Whereas little boys, it's their job. They're going to be help them to become men. So physicality, hyperactivity, boisterousness, that's all normal and part of development. But women and girls, masking and also fitting in and not being any trouble is very, very important. And particularly for teenagers, teenage years are so hard. Your brain is developing and you so desperately want to express yourself as an individual. Through doing that, you end up being the same as everybody else, because you ultimately want to be part of the pack and fit in. So you are, I think some of the, I have an old friend from high school, but from junior school, I don't got any friends from then. And I think they would be horrified to hear about, they would have no idea, never guess, because I was expert at fitting in and meeting expectations, but didn't always work.
So if you think between spanning from your school years to corporate world, can you share some of masking examples that you had put in place? Like you said, your friend next to you would explain the instructions to you.
So, I had exceptional ability with language, writing, reading. I couldn't necessarily read what I'd written, but, so I did all sorts of weirds and things and still get my B's and D's the wrong way around. But yes, it would be a case of, the teacher does their thing and it'd be like, what are we doing? And they'll go, blah, 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 and I'd keep my head, like, I just don't know how to do it. And, often not do it. And we're talking 1970s classroom here, 1980s when I was, it's different now. there's a lot more scrutiny. You could, particularly in maths. Yeah. I did my math. It's interesting. I got my degree first before I got my maths.
Right. Okay.
But I love maths now, and I'm quite good at maths.
Yeah.
So it just shows you, your neurodevelopment and how they talk about late developers. Well, I was certainly a late developer when it came to maths, but nobody seemed to be that bothered that I could draw like an adult when I was a teenager and read and write and languages and taught myself like different alphabets for kicks. Had a reading age, first year high school when people went around the room about like, oh, is anybody reading anything? What are you reading? And they'd be like, Jacqueline Wilson or Enid Blyton or whatever. I'm like, what are you, and I put my hand up, Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky. And the teacher would be like, right, moving on. Or, anyway. And then you just feel like a complete and total weirdo. And then
Yes.
you would not bother telling anybody anything ever again after that. And also very early childhood, was in some of the interviews that I've done, is that when I did have a maths meltdown, this is like first year junior school. I think, do they call it year 3 now? Yeah. So after infants, it was first year juniors. I had a bit of a meltdown about my maths, and I was just like so frustrated because I just couldn't do it. I swept the maths book off the table and it went, and the teacher was horrified, so horrified, because up to that point, I was quite a good girl and was kept very able, writing, drawing, reading and all of the rest of it. So this was just like, whereas the little boy who was constantly naughty and disruptive, that was okay. But for me to do this, she was like, her face was just like, God, children who behave like you will end up in prison.
Wow.
And so I didn't get any help with my maths. And that sort of taught me you don't express your emotions, especially because it was extreme in that, and you had to be very careful about, there was obviously something wrong with me because I thought I was extremely thick and stupid because I couldn't do the maths thing, and that I behaved and I was out of control. And I was totally confused because I was somebody who was ultra compliant, strictly brought up, to breathe. I came from that sort of cultural upbringing. My dad was a refugee, and because we had everything, you just had to crack on and you were going to be brilliant at everything. You had to be, and you would be good. So it was very confusing, very confusing.
Yeah, that could really mess with your mind. Absolutely, especially at a young age like that.
Well, it did. It did.
Yeah. And I think this happens a lot for girls. Like, you have to be the good girl, like you said. So any bad behavior, you get reprimanded. But the boys, because that's expected of boys, it's fine, right? And you can also...
Yes, that's right. Yeah. And I think,
Yeah.
Women can get caught up in that, can't they? That even without being neurodivergent, if you're loud and assertive, you're bossy rather than, well, you've got, you're assertive and leadership qualities and you're strong and you know your own mind. Why is that unfeminine? So, it was very confusing, and school was very, very difficult because on one hand it was, I got the intellectual stretch, and on the other hand it was socially, environmentally pretty hellish.
And how was it forming friendships for you? Because you did mention about not being able to read other people's intentions.
Yeah, I think with other girls, I only had 1 or 2 very close friends. I couldn't have buddies, and I still have 1 or 2 very close friends, and I've still got the one from first year high school, the day we met. So yeah, generally they're all of my friends had them for decades. We pick up where we left off. I don't think I have any difficulty, but it's usually when it's one-on-one and you've got something in common to talk about, that's okay. But throw me into a room or a party, I'll just want to dive for cover and hide. Unless it's a group of people that I've worked with, like, for instance, I'm a part of an arts and drama group, and we put on a play and a show, and there was an after party. No difficulty with that. So,
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so it depends on the environment too. That plays a big
Absolutely, it
factor.
does. Yeah.
So you use the phrase functioning does not mean thriving. So can you unpack that a little bit for us, for the listeners?
Yes, this hyperachieving is fine, but I think there can be a cost for it, and it's recognizing through the self-awareness, and the coaching program develops true self-awareness, because we all think I'm self-aware, but when it comes to awareness of one's neurodivergence and how it shows up, that's different. And to truly understand it and how it manifests itself, I've found to be super important so that I can achieve, hyperachieve, perform well without paying a too high a cost for it. I've also learned about good enough, fit for purpose. And then you've got enough fuel in the tank to go for broke on the things that you really, really want to and passionate about. And you've got enough energy left for it, because you can invest all of your energy into all the negative things or swimming against the current. If you're completely acting contra to your strengths, it becomes self-sabotage. So it's getting acquainted with all of that and understanding that. And that takes work, some degree of introspection, why the coaching has changed everything to really put a spotlight on how, what, and, it's a bit like, at work, we're always continuous improvement and efficiency and lean and agile models. Well, yeah, you can use the similar sort of things with project management methodology, agile, and apply it to your own home. Like women and girls, we're all like estate managers, aren't we? We've got a house to run, we've got things, and also how you work. You can actually apply all of these theories and practices to your own advantage with how your own operating system works. I can sprint in the morning, have a huddle with myself and sprint in the morning. And then I know that it will wear off by about 11:30. And then I therefore need to go and do the things that require, when the engine is running idle, ticking over, I'll go and maybe mow the lawn, or I'll pull up some weeds, I'll put the washing out, and I'll be thinking, and then energized, refueled, spark plugs have gone off. I'm like, right, I can do that. So, certain things will generate dopamine, and then I will surf the wave to do the things that are hard. I did publicly speak recently and did a post about it, is that, often in the corporate environment, I was constantly told, you swallow the frog first. What is that all about? Like when we were a kid, you have to eat your greens first before you can have your pudding. Well, with an ADHD brain, that doesn't work. If you want your pudding first, eat your pudding if it's going to give you what you need to get all the other stuff done. So for me, something that is rewarding and with guaranteed payoff is essential to get started. So you start with that, and then with the motivation, the satisfaction and the fulfillment, because it will be short-lived, you ride that and you go and do the next thing that's really like horrible, like, I don't know, renewing your car insurance or checking your insurance covers your keys because you lost them, like I did the other day, that sort of thing. So all of these things of looking at what drains your energy, what gives you energy, and that can directly influence how you structure your day. I am very privileged and very, very fortunate in that I work for myself now, and I can structure my day that plays directly into my strengths and how my brain system operates. So
I love that. Yeah.
So it keeps me exercised, energy levels good, mood is constant. It's not infallible. I'm not saying it, it's perfect. I'm not fixed. There's no such thing. You live with it all the time. And some days I'll think, I haven't got ADHD. What a load of nonsense. I'm having a really great day. And then it's like, yeah, right, well, So yeah, each day is different and it can catch you out. Like when I went to Sainsbury's today, for some reason, I just felt suddenly really anxious. I'd got my headphones on. I was thinking, why is that? What's that all about? And it's habit. You can learn habits. I think, no, this is okay. No, I've got a structure. I've got a direction. I know what I'm doing, and I will come out with what I went in for, and it's going to be fine. Because I went as soon as the shop opened, because I have to go when it's empty. I can't go when there's other people there. But yeah, you can put everything you can in place, but there will be moments when it perhaps might let you down, but you're in a much stronger place to recover from and to take action and think, this is what this is. It's okay. I can manage and deal with this. I will. And this moment will pass.
This is like a different level of self-awareness, really.
Yes, completely.
Yeah.
But it's switched on, that mode, 24. It has to be, because you there's no off button.
Who you are. It's because of who you are, and you're living in a system that's not actually built for you. So you just have to.
But it does have its gifts, I wrote the book, and I do art and drama and embroidery, and and lots of things. I have to have lots of different things, So, the active imagination. So a lot of the things that I wrote were, perhaps ideas where I was looking out the window, maybe in a meeting. So that's, it's always at work all of the time. So that helped me write the novel. I did that for escapism and for kicks, and I did finish it, which was an achievement.
Yeah.
Because I've started 2 or 3 novels. Wrote the first one when I was 9, never finished it. Wrote the next one when I was like 13, never finished it. Had one on the go for a while, never got it out of my brain. So I got it out of my brain, I got it on paper, then I got it into a computer, and then it took me 6 months to write it, and then it took me 18 months to edit the thing. So, and then, got it out there.
Yeah. You're speaking my language. I think I've got like 4 books that I've started writing.
Yeah. So now I've got short stories, and I was sitting in the, I can't say that, sitting on the loo, I was thinking, I've got another idea for a short story. Because I thought, why do I write novels then? If I can't finish it, why don't I just write short stories as well?
Oh,
so
that's a good idea.
Yeah. So so I'm on, and I'm starting the sequel for the novel as well, because I love my characters and I miss them. But that, again, it's highly situational. I have to be really in the right mood. I can't have too much other stuff going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And how much does nervous system play into it? Like keeping your nervous system regulated. How important is that for someone who's neurodivergent?
Very, because that's everything. I mean, like I said, it's intrinsic. You can't get away from it. So, and I think all of those things that I've described about playing to your strengths and understanding when you're optimal actually helps staying regulated. So there's no one trick that will keep you regulated. It's a way of life that keeps you regulated for me. So the coaching and the structure and the direction that I have for a day, what I do what I eat, when I eat, how I exercise, routines, those sorts of things have a massive influence on staying okay and in control of my life. Because before I was not in control of my own life, because I wasn't in control of my ADHD symptoms or even my autistic symptoms that were not always conducive to achieving what I was trying to achieve. So it's a whole thing. I mean, I do STIM. I didn't know that I needed to, and I didn't actually know that that is what I did. So I do it. And I actually find, I was sitting next to my mum the other day, and she's like, stop jiggling your knee. And I'm like, I have to jiggle my knee. She goes, yeah, but it's annoying. I said, well, I have to, because it keeps you able to stay in the moment, but not get the panic. So you're not overwhelmed by the senses, because your body is kept in rhythm and stimulated by something else. I had no idea the value that offered me. I had a lovely lady that I had a call with, and she very kindly sent me a wearable STIM thing. And I lost it, and then I found it, and I thought, I can't possibly wear something, because I can't stand things on me. And then I found it, and I was sitting there, and I was like, and I actually found that absentmindedly I was popping this thing and rubbing this thing the whole time. I was like, this is great. I am super chilled, So I say to my client, it's about experiment. We can't possibly know what we need until we explore and figure it out. I haven't got all the answers, but even now I'm just learning every day. I learn every day from clients who have certain things that they do, or books that they've read, or it's a great learning experience as well to find out what other people do help themselves that can be shared or taken on yourself, or shared with somebody else, because it's not static, it's evolving all of the time. So lives are always changing in a situation. As I said, you have to find what works for that particular moment and that particular thing that's going on. So the stimming thing, totally amazingly light bulb moment thing.
And had you always been doing that with your knee, and you only just realized it, or were you always aware of it?
Well, foot jiggling and finger sort of fiddling, and I would always be do it in the meeting like this. So I'd have different things I hadn't actually realized. But what I also did was where I didn't, and I would be stock still, because you are expected to be absolutely still. And when I was younger and little, and I would sit, we'd watch telly, and I'd sit in between my grandparents, and you weren't allowed to stop fidgeting. You'd sit still, and it would just be awful. And it's just stress and overwhelmment, and you then start to realize about the that you then become aware of the sensory overload. So, but I've just sort of discovered, this is a discovery journey, that is what that was all about, and why also I would go sensory seeking certain things. Like, we can laugh about it now, my mum and I, where I would do things like, some kids are that, like cutting things, sensation of cutting things with scissors. Yeah. I got to the curtains, but I went for my dad's razor blades. I was quite little, and we had those, little boxes of like Wilkinson sword razor blades. Yeah. Climbed up and got those. I thought, oh, they look interesting. Get one of those out, finger chop, anyway, cutting things with them, cutting, slicing, because it's literally like magic, the way a razor blade can go through stuff. Hot water bottles full, needle. Sensation of sticking a needle into a full hot water bottle. Oh my God. And we had 5 or 6 and I did them all. Yeah. So anyway,
interesting.
We can laugh about it now.
Yeah.
But that's the sort of things that I would just go off exploring, looking for stuff to get into, because everything was fascinating. And I also interesting. I was curious. And I think something I heard the other day, actually, was it something I read on Facebook? Can't remember. Curiosity. It's a ADHD thing, which is really great, and that we should champion it, praise it, value it, because our curious brains that we have in childhood do not change. We have, I think, one certainly applies to me, the curiosity levels still a kid. And that's why I find it very hard to stick at, because I'm into everything. I want to know about everything.
Oh, I'm the same. I don't know how many courses I've signed up for. I won't tell you.
Yeah, because you don't want to be just thinking, yeah.
I started making a list the other day, and I stopped, and I was like, oh my God, this is...
Yeah. I did bonkers things, like I had to learn how to ice skate. I had to be brilliant at ice skating, slightly dyspraxic. So my partner, who's a very good figure skater, by the way, very annoying, had the most terrible time teaching me how to ice skate. Why couldn't I do it? Meltdowns, tears, had to be able to do it. Did it, pursued it for like 2 years. Forgotten about that now. Never put my ice skates on since. Had a horse, itch I scratched. Next. And slightly less expensive and bonkers. I do, I've got a hobby room, and sometimes if the door's shut, I'll forget it's there. Yeah. And I'll go in, I'm like, oh, crikey, yes, I remember that now. Because I'll have been on a baking binge, I'm into baking at the moment. Well, I've always been into baking, massive foodie, love making bread, cakes, all of that. And yeah, I can be very monotropic. Massively into that, and then you forget all about all of the other things in life. It's like I'll have a full-on conversation with somebody, and then they're like, is anything else to add? Oh yeah, I wrote a novel. Oh, I completely forgot. Because the things just take up so much of your capacity. Capacity stealers.
Yes. And I find even with reading books, right? So I've got a lot of books I love reading, but I have to be reading at least 3 or 4 books at the same time, because if I'm reading a book for too long, like if I'm focused on just reading this book, I get bored with it, or I feel like it's just getting too much. I need something different. So I'm always reading like 3 or 4 books at the same time. So I alternate between them, just because if I focus too much, unless it's a really, really good book, like really good.
You'll have to read mine then, see what you think.
Yes, I will.
I'd be mortified if you'd want to put that down for something else. But anyway, failed.
But I think it's like my brain just gets... It's like it becomes overwhelmed and too much, and then I need to move on to the next thing to re-stimulate it.
Yes.
And so I'm always moving. I think maybe it's 1 or 2 books that I've actually finished reading in one sitting. I always have to change it up, like otherwise I just get, my brain just can't, and I need to move on. I need something else just to reset.
I do know what you mean with
that.
You can have too much of a good thing.
Yeah.
And then you have to drop it and move on to something else. But I am consistently inconsistent. I think that's what I wanted to say. That's what I meant to say.
So let's talk a little bit about burnout. So burnout is something many women in our audience are either in the middle of or recovering from. So, and you talk about burnout as an access issue, not a character issue. Let's talk a little bit about that, what you mean by that.
Yeah, because I think burnout can build over a long period of time, and it's not necessarily one trigger. Or it could be, but sometimes one trigger can just be the last straw of the camel's back that's like, that's it. I think my experience of burnout has been all of those factors that I've talked about, where you are being sensory overloaded, fatigued, no recovery time, processing super fast again, which is taking up so much energy because your processing is slower than perhaps other people's, and running on empty constantly. So I have managed not to burn out for nearly 2 years now. But I was constantly in burnout when I was in the workplace because I just did not know how to avoid it. So, and it is very, very difficult when you have got small children, neurodivergent children, or children with special educational needs, or just demanding family life, complicated relationships, illness, loss of employment, house moves, you name it. Everybody's got loads of stuff on their plates, and to be able to try and wade through that and look after oneself at the same time sounds absolutely impossible. And people think she's all right because she works for herself. She doesn't have to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and drive 3 hours to wherever it is. Well, I did do that, did all of those things, and had a single parent for quite a long time. Admittedly, I only had one child, but I have gone through these things, and through a combination of small things, a little, a lot, can make a difference so that your burnout chances are reduced. But it can mean lots of things. I mean, I've had some clients where they were absolutely shredded. One lady was hospitalized. She was so stressed and anxious. She thought she'd had heart problems, tachycardia, arrhythmia, complete stress head. And poor woman was just struggling really, really hard. So, and we went through the coaching program. So that's looking at everything, sort of 360. So home, relationships, communication, work, what's going on at work, the environment, the processes, and looking at all of the things that were tipping her over the edge and stealing all of her energy, and how to look at that and to examine it. So it's quite an in-depth thing. Anyway, I'm delighted to say that by the end of the program, she'd got herself a different job, re-energized, happy, optimistic, looking forward to the next chapter, and also enjoying her home life more and the interactions with her family members. And she'd also built a sensory room for herself that she and her sons should also share and experience. And the lady that I saw on the phone, rubbing her face and twiddling, and you could see the anguish in the hand wringing, the hair twiddling, and the face rubbing, to the more serene, excited but calmer person at the end of it. It's wonderful to then get their updates later about what they're doing, and that's what it's all about.
And your program is a 12-week program?
There is a program. There's also one-on-one and single sessions. So the 12-week program is based on Leanne Maskell's ADHD Works ADHD coaching, which focuses on executive function, all executive functions, and how they're affected by ADHD symptoms. Your ADHD symptoms, yours personally, not. I mean, there is a commonality and there is a gamut of ADHD symptoms. So we can look at priorities. So it's looking at and coaching through lived experience and looking at how the ADHD and autism shows up and is impacting life adversely or positively. This is not correctional fixing, it's collaboration and devising strategies and ways of living to improve and build skills so that you can thrive rather than just purely survive. I also do one-on-one single session coaching, which can be very specific. So I have a lady who's got real family relationship issues, and we're coaching through those and looking at how her ADHD and autism is showing up there to influencing that. So we're just really looking at and coaching through how she actually speaks to them, what she says and how she says it, and positioning, and also thinking about messages received, how the message is received, and how it's relayed back. Because she has a husband who's autistic and she's ADHD. So quite interesting, fascinating. I also do body doubling and accountability buddy sessions. So there's a combination of things. And I'm also working on a specific, like a neuro audit for high impact, say an hour and a half session, looking at what it could be a precursor to the program actually, but that sort of big deep dive on what perhaps the factors are that are going to be contributing to burnout, what things in the workplace could be, even just things like managing your inbox, or relationship with your manager, and how to actually have, the one-to-one situation or post one-to-one, because we get a lot of rejection sensitive dysphoria, so there's that.
So there's a lot of relearning a lot of how you relate to other people, the world. And that's what it sounds like. And you sort of help people, you sort of coach people to get there, right?
Yes.
So Isabel, before I let you go, what are some of the key things that you really want the audience to walk away with today from our conversation?
It's never too late to take action and to improve your life outcomes and experiences through understanding and opening your mind to the possibilities, because it might be suspected, neurodivergence, or, to have things work out better, live better and manage them better. Yeah, definitely. That coaching, I have such belief in it because I did it and it really helped me.
And one of the last questions I want to ask you, and I ask this to all my guests, is what would you tell your younger self if she was sitting right next to you?
Get ADHD coaching as quickly as you can, and find
advice.
other people with it. I think, we're all products of our environment and generation. I was a product of my time. Was not, if it wouldn't have been available then, So if I went back in time, I'd take what I know now back there and talk to that person and say, life doesn't have to be like this.
There's nothing wrong with you.
There's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah.
This is what it is and why it is, and here's how it can make it work better for you. Because, it's not a curse. There are really great gifts it can give you. But the reality of it is a lot of it can just not fit in with how the world works.
Absolutely.
So it's just understanding that and finding your path through the woods. Yeah.
Learning to navigate the world. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And finally, where can our listeners find you if they want to learn more about your work or they want to reach out and work with you?
Yes. So I have a company website, which is www.atthemillpond.co.uk. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm the only Isabel Lepist, Isabel with an O, Lepist, and I post on there, so there'll be useful insights. I also have an author website. If you would like to go and have a look at the novel, that is iglepistauthor.com. The book's on Amazon. But if you look up IG Lepist, that's my author name, you'll find the book, and it's called The Event. So you search on my name, because nobody else is called IG Lepist in the world, maybe in Estonia, where it's from, and you find it. Yeah, so a number of places, but the main one is if it's ADHD coaching, you'd like to get in touch, fill in the form or email me, message me directly on Facebook as well. I have a company page on there, at the Mill Pond.
Okay, great. And I'll put the links in the show notes as well if anybody wants to reach out to Isabel and work with you. Yeah. Well, Isabel, this has been a very rich and validating conversation. Thank you so much for your openness, your wisdom, and the work that you're doing in the world. Our listeners are very lucky to have you on today to share your experience.
Well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, and thank you for, as I say, this opportunity to talk about it. And as I say, I hope it resonates and that will help somebody. Thank you.
I just want to take this moment to say thank you to Isabel again for joining me on the show today and sharing her story. It was such a rich, validating, and genuinely eye-opening conversation. And I know it's going to resonate with a lot of you listeners that have been sitting with this for a long time. If today's episode landed for you, if you've heard something in Isabel's story and thought, that's me, then please know you're not alone. And more importantly, you are not broken. You just haven't been given the right framework yet. To find Isabel and work with her and learn more about what she does, you can visit her website at www.atthemillpond.co.uk, where she offers one-to-one ADHD coaching for neurodivergent adults and a 12-week program focused on executive function, emotional regulation, and burnout recovery. If you're curious about whether coaching could support you, Isabel offers an initial discovery call. The link will be in the show notes. You can also find Isabel on LinkedIn. She's the only Isabel Lepist in the world, so you should be able to find her easily, and on Facebook at The Mill Pond. And if you'd like to read her novel, The Event, it's available on Amazon under the author name IG Lepist. Details are in the show notes. You know where to go. Now, if the episode resonated with you, the most powerful thing that you can do is to share it. Send it to a friend who's been feeling exhausted and out of sync. Share it in a group. Leave a review. Every share puts this conversation in front of someone who might really need it. And remember what Isabel said to her younger self. There is nothing wrong with you. This is what it is. And here's how you can make it work better for you. That's it for today's episode of the Midlife Awakening. Take care of your heart. Take care of yourself. And remember, it's never too late to begin again. Bye for now.